This morning, how widespread was historical sexual abuse in football? 3 former youth players exclusively tell us about the abuse they say they suffered at the hands of their former coach, Barry Bennell, a convicted paedophile. Since Andy Woodward told us last week in his first broadcast interview that he'd been raped hundreds of times by Bennell whilst at Crewe Alexandra, in total, 6 other players have now come forward to waive their right to anonymity. And we can speak to 3 of them now. Chris Unsworth says he was raped between 50 and 100 times by Bennell at Manchester City and Crewe youth teams. He didn't tell a single person about the abuse for over 30 years, until in fact he saw our interview with Andy Woodward last week. Jason Dunford says he was abused once by Bennell at the Manchester City youth team, and when he told him to get off, Bennell effectively forced him out of the club. Neither of them turned professional, in part, they say, because of Bennell's abuse. They're both speaking publicly for the very first time today. Steve Walters says he was repeatedly abused by Bennell whilst at Crewe. This is his first TV interview. And with them is Andy Woodward, the player whose revelations have inspired others to speak out at last. As you'd expect, our conversation with them is going to be frank, it's going to be open, and it will cover details of sexual abuse. First of all, let me thank you so much for coming on the programme today. We really, really appreciate you talking to our audience. Chris, I'm going to start with you. When you first watched the interview with Andy last week, what effect did it have on you?
A massive effect, really. Just watching Andy on TV. I was just at home with my girlfriend, who actually watched the TV interview and brought it home. And we sat down and watched it. I didn't say anything apart from I knew Andy. I used to play with Andy. We had a little chat. She asked me if I was okay. Then I came home, and I sat at home and thought about this. And I thought, I've got to come forward. Got to come forward and help everybody.
You had never told a soul?
No. Never told anyone. Kept it locked away right in the back of my head. And still, I'm reliving things, having a chat with the boys and reliving it. No, never told a soul.
You were first introduced to Bennell when he was a scout at Manchester City. How did his abuse of you begin? It began. He used to pick me up. I was probably one of the closest lads that lived to his house in the Peak District.
In the Peak District. Yeah. He used to pick me up, and the abuse started in the car. He used to touch. We used to play games in the car, and that's when it all started.
And that would be on the way to training? On
the way to training and on the way back.
Right. And then he invited you to stay over at his house?
Yeah, that happened a little bit later, but not long after. At first there was, 2, 3, 4 lads that used to stay there, and there was always 2 or 3 in the bed.
Right. And I'm going to ask you, Chris, what he did to you.
At first it started, the games used to start, and it was hands everywhere, then down the pants. And then later it got more serious in the bedroom, where there was penetration, things like that.
And what age were you?
I was about 9.
And what did you as a little boy think was going on?
I didn't know what was going on, to be fair. I knew where I wanted to get, and I thought, this is obviously what I've got to go through.
Did you know it was wrong? What he was doing was wrong?
I knew it was wrong, but I just went with it. Just went with it. Did you ever consider telling a friend, a teammate, another adult? No, never.
Why?
It just wasn't the in thing to do. It just wasn't the in thing to do. And you set your you set your goals where you want to get to, and it was never brought up, never.
He stopped after a few years as you got older, sort of 13, 14.
When you get a bit older and you're growing up, you're a young adult, your body changes. That's when your time really is it with him. Move on to fresh blood, as they say.
To younger boys, effectively.
Yeah, to younger boys.
When you got to 15, 16, you turned your back on football.
I did, yeah. I turned my back on football, and I was lucky. Saying lucky, is that the right word? I had other sports to pursue, and I turned professional golfer. So I had a sight, and I had a goal, and that was my escape route.
Right. And you turned your back on football because you associated it with this horror?
Yeah, somebody asked me that yesterday. At the time, I don't know. Was I good enough? I don't know. Looking back, I'd say yes. I probably turned football. I just had enough. That was it.
I can't imagine what it's like for a young boy growing up through adolescence into adulthood, and for decades keeping this kind of cataclysmic secret.
No, I chatted with my friend the other night about this, and you just get on with your life and you forget everything that has happened. As I say, luckily I had my golf to go to, and that guided me through, I think. But both my parents have died, and that hurts me.
Yeah.
Not telling them.
Does it?
Yeah. But I don't know if it's a good thing that I did or I didn't tell them, because they would have blamed themselves. So.
Chris, thank you for telling us such personal, intimate and also horrific details. I want to bring in Steve, if I may. I wonder, Steve, what the effect on you has been of revealing this secret.
It's been like a massive relief after seeing Andy, how brave he's been. Last week, you know, the article in the Guardian. I was in the house on my own. I read it. I was inconsolable. I thought I was going to have a panic attack because it was virtually the same scenario as me, and it's just. I somehow picked the phone up and phoned the newspaper because I was that hangry, upset, but in another way, it was like the biggest. Like I said to Andy, it was like 100 tons lift off my shoulders.
Really?
Yeah, because to carry, you know, I've been carrying this all my life. You know, my career's been ruined, my relationships have been ruined, and like, you know, just I had to get it out there because, you know, I've got children. This could never ever happen to any more children.
You had a reputation as being one of the finest young footballers in the country as a teenager.
That's right. Yeah. You know, people say to me, you know, what happened to you, Steve? And like, in a football environment, it's full of bravado and men, and like, you know, we've all met last night. You know, and our stories, and you know, we're all the same. I can't believe how brave we've all been there, and it's just.
You think he effectively snatched your footballing career away from you?
Well, yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah.
You know, it's as simple as that. You know, what's disappointed me really is like Crewe Alexandra, you know, I come from Plymouth, and you know, my dad's dead now, but he ended up working at Crewe as well, and you know, my parents put trust into that football club, and basically they've let us down, all of us.
Can you explain to our audience, Steve, why you were afraid to tell anyone?
I've had problems with relationships with men, because I've always thought that. I've always thought, you know, am I gay? You know, what's happened to us is, you know, he's made us feel like that. You know, that's not right. You know, it's affected every single relationship I've had with anybody. Like, but it's just so hard to explain. It's so difficult, honestly.
In the early 90s, the police did talk to you, didn't they? When they started to investigate Barry Bennell,
yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
asked you.
They come to my house on 3 separate occasions, and you know, my career was, you know, I got told that I was never going to play football again. So, you know, somehow I managed to carry on. I'd end up playing in the conference for North East Victoria, but you know, I still wanted that dream of I wanted to fight this and beat this, and you know, if I did come out, it wouldn't, you know, would people believe you? Would people, you know, back in that day and age, if you come out with this sort of accusations, so to speak, would anybody believe you? And that, would you get the support that we've had at the moment? You know, back then you just did not know.
No. I'm going to read some messages from our audience this morning. Are you all right, Andy?
Yeah. Well, okay, just a bit emotional. I'm all right.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Katie says, I want to praise these high-profile footballers for coming forward and being so brave to speak openly about the terrible things that happened to them. I hope it will help bring the culprits to justice. Tweet from Sue says, watching Victoria Live, 4 brave men on the programme today. This from Sue, my heart goes out to these men right now. It takes incredible courage to speak to anyone about this, let alone tell the nation. Roxy says, incredible bravery being shown by the footballers on your programme. The absolute epitome of courage, and my heart goes out to them. This from Stephen, really brave men. Thank you all for your courage, guys. I mean, there are so many of these. Tweet from David, absolutely essential. These football abuse survivors get access to talking therapy individually or as a dedicated group. Victor says, respect for the courage of these men. I think in your case, Steve, similar to Andy, similar to Chris actually, Barry Bennell was saying to you, you know, I'll get you there. You stick with me, I'll get you playing for England.
That's correct, yeah. He made all these false promises, and you know, he had character. His coaching skills were something that we'd never seen in this country before. You know, the thing he could do things with the football we'd never seen before. In these, I could produce that into the game and show you these tricks and flicks, and you know, he promised you this, he promised you that, but it was just all grooming, wasn't it?
Since you spoke to The Guardian earlier this week, Steve, do you think you've had enough support from footballers, from the football world, from ex-pros who are high profile? Have you had enough support from those kind of people?
I'd like a little bit more, really. There's a lot of high profile teammates who are out there, but still think there's this bravado thing in football that needs to be sorted out now, because you know, it's okay. They were successful in their careers, and you know, we've all had our lives and careers snatched away from us. You know, we all need the support from anybody and everybody out there.
Clearly, in your case, Steve, in your case, Chris, you're speaking about this for the first time after all these decades. So what happened to you was not part of the evidence against Bennell when he was jailed in the late 90s. What do you want to happen now?
Want justice now. You know, the thought of Barry Bennell being out on the streets. For example, coming down here last night, our train was unfortunately terminated at Milton Keynes, and apparently that's where he is. And you know, we had to get off the train at night. I was saying to my wife,
It's all right. It's all right. It's all right.
you know, he could be, you know, here now. You know, it's just want justice and, you know, closure on here now. You know, all this has got to be rectified as soon as possible.
I'm going to bring in Jason, if I may. Thank you, Steve. Jason, compared to Andy, Steve and Chris, you describe yourself as lucky. Explain to our audience why you say that.
I feel I'm lucky because at the moment of what is determined now as sexual assault, I told him where to go. I confronted him, and as I told the boys last night, I'll never forget the deathly stare.
And this was in his house?
No, this was in a holiday camp.
Oh, yeah.
At Butlins. And that stare was one of, I can never ever forget that stare, but from that day forward, I knew my life was going to be really difficult with this guy. Because
you told him to
I told him to go.
Where to go.
I told him to F off.
Yeah. He then started
and
to play the mind
I remember
games.
physically hitting him, of which there was no retaliation from the guy. As a 13-year-old boy, nearly 14 years of age, I was the same as every boy in this settee. I had a dream of being a footballer, and every child who has a dream, to me, should be able to try and achieve that dream without having to go through sexual abuse or being around sexual predators. Barry Bennell, to me, was not only a dangerous man, and he still is a dangerous man, but most of the lads that were involved in his coaching and being involved in the squads that he coached over the years will find this very difficult, and hopefully, by what's going on, we're going to get some results.
When you told him where to go, he then started the mind games. He would tell you he was going to play you, then he was going to drop you, then you turn up at games on a Sunday, your mum would drive however many miles to take you there, and you'd be standing on the sidelines and never get on.
Yeah.
And that was the start of him trying to isolate you. What else did he do, Jason?
Yeah, he detached me from the group by playing mind games with me. But like the lads have said, because you're following a dream, you're prepared to go through with it. The difference, and why I feel different to these lads, is that I wasn't prepared to put up with that. I love the game of football. I thought to myself, there's other ways around this. Barry Bennell isn't the be-all and end-all of getting me to where I want to go. And if I have to go around the houses, I'll go to another team. I'll try something a little bit different. Because as he tried to detach me from the group by fabricating stories of me amongst my teammates.
Well, he said that you'd stolen money from one of your teammates, didn't he?
Yeah, he took us down to Norfolk for a Canary Cup tournament, which at the time my father was, a working class man who had to pay for this trip. And as it usually was, we'd come home with a trophy and there was no trophy. The team had been dropped, the team had been defeated, and my father just said to me, well, why haven't you played? I said, well, do you really want to tell your parents that you've been accused of being a thief? Do you really want to be that? I had to make up and fabricate the story to my parents. It mustn't, in my mother's head, she was just looking at the football side of it, like every single parent that worked hard, that brought the children, run about the country with this man, bringing the children to the football. And I think for those parents out there who are kicking themselves, don't be guilty. Do not be guilty, because this man was playing games with not only the children's heads, he was playing games with the parents' heads as well.
This morning, good morning, by the way, we are talking to Chris Unsworth, to Jason Dunford and to Steve Walters, 3 men who've spoken about the abuse they experienced as young boys, footballers, loving the game of football, by their coach, Barry Bennell, a convicted paedophile. Chris and Jason speaking publicly for the very first time today. Steve, in his first TV interview, has explained what happened to him, and all of them have spoken because of what Andy Woodward did a week ago. Andy is here too and is very emotional, which is completely understandable. But I want to ask you guys, if Andy hadn't spoken out, would you have ever come forward?
Not in a million years. You know, I keep telling Andy this. What he's done is so brave, inspirational. It's, you know, in our opinion, for what he's done now is absolutely fantastic. What he's done, so brave. You know, I've been calling him he's like my new brother. You know.
What would you say, Chris?
It was locked way back in my mind and I'd forgotten about it. I would never have come forward if I hadn't seen Andy on telly.
But what was it about him speaking about his experiences that inspired you to do the same?
Just because I know what he has been through, because I've been through exactly the same and all the lads have been through the same. And this has got to stop. And the only way that I could help is to come forward.
You seem quite strong, Chris, if you don't mind me saying.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that, but I don't know if I'm that strong, I don't know. Deep down, I don't think I am, but I'm a funeral director, I see lots of horrible things, so that probably made me a little bit stronger than the rest of the lads.
What would you say to Andy?
I love Andy to bits, and I'm here because of him.
Andy, you've done a quite remarkable thing, you know.
I was totally overwhelmed, you know. Last week I was on here, I was on my own, and I was so scared, but I knew that they were here. I've got, honest to God, Victoria, I can't thank the public enough, and the media, and more importantly, the lads for backing me up, you know. I'm just totally overwhelmed.
Yeah. I want to ask you all about your parents letting you stay over at a coach's house. I'd like to think that would never happen today. What was different about back then?
From my perspective, I'll come together now. My perspective is that, I've said it before in other interviews, that the parents didn't know. They didn't know, and they are also victims in this, you know.
Correct.
I had my mum and dad
Absolutely.
in tears last night because they actually realised for the first time that they're actually victims as well in this. And they are.
Is it feasible that other adults at the time really didn't know what was happening?
Impossible. The football clubs, I don't believe it for 1 minute. I believe there was a conspiracy, there was a paedophile ring, and there was people at those football clubs that had duty to look after the welfare of young boys coming through their system. This is their potential future stars, and their future stars are being sexually abused and sexually assaulted by a member of their staff.
Steve, what do you think? Is it possible other adults really didn't know?
I don't honestly know.
Until Bennell's arrest?
I honestly don't know, really, to be honest with you.
Chris?
I think members of the club, they knew what was going on. They knew what was going on, but it was just swept under the carpet.
You're talking about senior players?
Senior players,
Senior management?
senior management, and the top as well.
Is this as big as Savile?
I I think Savile looks like a choir boy compared to this fella and what's going on right now. Let me tell you.
As I said,
This
Victoria,
is so big.
Yeah, as I
So
said,
big.
I said on Channel 4 last night. I'll tell you a story that this is chilling. This. Somebody rang me up and said, "Do you remember going to Gran Canaria?" And I did it myself as well. And he said there was 7 of us that went away. And he said, "Do you know what? We went for 7 days with 7 of us, and he had one every night."
Do you know why you didn't talk to each other as boys?
It
Back
wasn't
then.
the thing to be done, was it, lads?
No.
No.
From being 11 years of age, you didn't discuss things like that. Because the dream would have burst. And lads just concentrated on improving football.
There is one, just Victoria, that just to show you that this is how it was, a written rule. I remember being on a train at the age of 13, and I've spoken to this lad, and it's 25 years since he's come out, and we were sat on a train, and he said, do you remember Woody, do you remember? And he looked at me and I looked at him, and we both knew. And we eye contact, and he said, you knew, didn't you? And I said, yeah, I knew. But the rest, we didn't talk to each other.
Could it have been prevented?
Yeah.
Chris?
I think, yeah, it could have been prevented, but way back then there was no laws.
No.
You just went with it. You just went with it.
Steve, do you think it could have been prevented?
Looking back at it now, yeah. You know, say like I said before, you know, I lived in Plymouth, so I had no choice to stay in.
Yeah, you moved up.
Yes, that's right. You know, I had to stay somewhere. So as far as my parents were concerned, you know, they put the trust into a football club, and surely they should have vetted and made sure the person that was looking after us was a normal person, you know.
Could it happen now?
I don't think so.
Really?
I don't think so. Recently I've been involved with a professional football club looking after boys our age. And, you know, the football club I worked at, everything is safeguarded, everyone is protected. It's just a different world now. And thankfully, for our young children, most of us have got children, and some boys at football clubs. And I'm more confident now than back in the 80s that this wouldn't happen.
Do you want to see these historic claims of sexual abuse in football brought into the wide-ranging national child sexual abuse inquiry?
It's a difficult question, that. I mean, what went on in the past, I mean, like I said to you, you know, all I was focusing on is now. I mean, if it helps for us to all to now move forward in football, that it's going to help safeguard and safeguard everyone in sport, then that's fine, yeah. And I think the issues, it's funny Jason just said that, I think the issues at professional football clubs, it's tight, it's ring fenced. I think the problem is in grassroots football, when there's these small clubs where parents are having to be managers and they're struggling to get sort of the funding and everything else, and these managers out there, it is an easy target, you know, because they are struggling to get managers that will look after the team.
But you still have to get checks in order to be a coach, don't you?
Yeah,
they take a bit of time to come through, but
you're supposed to. But when you know you've not got a manager and they're really struggling to get these kids,
people step in.
But Victoria, can I just comment there? Up till 1990, whenever it was, he was first arrested. If you would have done a background check in those days, as it is today, he might have been okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't caught.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is we've got a system in place at the moment whereby one of trust until you become an offender, which obviously carries victims, then you can get away with whatever you want to do.
After Bennell's conviction in 1998 and George Ormond in 2002, that's the Newcastle United connection, as far as I can see, there was no effort made by any club or the FA to try to investigate whether there were other alleged victims, whether there were other offenders. What do you think of that, Chris?
I just think it's shocking. Shocking. It's like everything that we've been through has been brushed under the carpet. And this is why we're here today, to bring it out and to make people aware. And hopefully others will come out and join us.
Yeah. Steve, what do you think about the fact that there was no wider inquiry from those within football to try to find out if others had been affected?
To be honest, I'm gobsmacked, really. All the organisations that are supposed to be responsible for, for football and looking after children, they've got a right and duty to protect us. So all the appropriate authorities, down to the police, everybody, the whole of football just needs ripping apart and say, as I said before, this can never ever happen to any young footballer again. It's all us four. There's others who've been brave enough to come out now. We're all going through a lot of pain at the moment, but if we can prevent anything else happening to any other young children, me personally, I'll die a happy man then.
I'm going to introduce you to Sarah, who's been watching you this morning. Sarah is one of our viewers. Sarah herself has been abused in the past. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning. What do you want to say to these gentlemen here this morning?
That looking at each one of you, I can see the depth of your pain, and I know what it takes to come forward. I think you're so brave. You're doing such an amazing thing for so many people and for yourselves that I hope your own pain will gradually ease and you have as many good things in your life as you possibly can. You're very, very brave and courageous. Thank you very much. You very much helped me as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Let me read some more messages. Johnny says, this has to be the most emotional interview I've ever seen. These guys are the bravest men in football. Massive respect. Georgina echoes that. These men are so brave. My heart goes out to them. Adam says, this story about paedophilia in football is just heartbreaking. These poor guys. Really moving testimony on sexual abuse in football today. Sarah says, heartbreaking. Abuse victims need a voice. We need to be heard when we speak up. Andy, please, any footballer, come out and support these brave guys who've come forward. Becky, so many footy kids are being driven around by parents with no checks. Mine always has his dad with him, but many don't. What do you want to happen now, Andy?
I've got this endeavour to go with this. I'm not going to stop. And I've spoke to the FA, and it's a passion inside my stomach that I'm going to do everything I can to help those young kids. And I won't stop. It's like Steve said there. I will die a happy man now, and I'm going to do everything I can possibly to help people. And all I've ever wanted in life is to help people, And for me as well, I'm so emotional because last week I was sat in here on my own. And now I've got these guys, and I've got so many people. I've worked so hard this last week. And I just encouraged, I know there's more out there, Victoria, I know there is, and they can do it. They really can do it,
I'm going to thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andy,
Thank you.
Chris, Steve, Jason. You have been incredibly dignified.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And honestly, there are so many messages, but you'll be able to see them on Twitter afterwards. Most of them talking about your courage, for speaking out on the programme today. I want to give you the 24-hour NSBCC hotline number. If you want to talk to somebody about abuse, or if you want to report abuse, it's this: 0800 023 2642. This is the hotline number that was set up, or that opened yesterday morning. 0800 023 2642. 0800 023 2642. Thank you again. Thank you.
Yeah.